1140 KSOO.
6 minutes after 6 o'clock, class continues at Viewpoint University. News earlier this week that the governor of Nebraska has approved the alternative route for the XL pipeline, Keystone XL pipeline, from the Trans-Canada people. And that is spurring a lot of conversation, a lot of other kinds of things, and concern, hand-wringing, and then joy in certain places. Joining us is Matt Koch. Mr. Koch is with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Institute for 21st Century Energy. He is their vice president for oil sands and Arctic issues. He joins us from, where are you today, Matt?
I am sitting right now in just outside of Arlington, Virginia, just outside of Washington.
Okay. So what's the weather like in Virginia today?
You know, we're not as thick-skinned and warm-blooded as you are up there, but it's about 15 degrees right now, and people are really complaining a lot about it. So
15 degrees here today, that would have been a heat wave.
Our blood's a little thinner, and we're, a little crazier, as you know, in the Washington area. So it's they just don't deal with it well. They're a little more thin-skinned.
So you folks at the Chamber, you've got to be jumping up and down for joy that Governor Heineman down there in Nebraska said, okie dokie, the pipeline can cross our state.
Absolutely. It's been a long process. As you know, the pipeline was proposed in January of 2008. The request for a permit came shortly after that year, and this has just been exhaustive, and an exhaustive process of review. And last January, when President Obama denied the permit and specifically pointed to concerns by Nebraska, the Nebraskans went to work to try to resolve those concerns. And we wish he would have been able to approve it last year, and it's been a year of delay. But now the argument's a little more airtight. They did a very thorough process, a very good environmental review, and went out and asked the public about their concerns. And so they've moved the route. That there's a lot of consensus around it, and he felt it was time, and the review was done, and now he, the Governor Heineman has now turned it over to the State Department and put his recommendation to them.
We are in the middle of a transition between Hillary Rodham Clinton and John Kerry. How does that reality play out with approval of this particular project?
I think it's gonna muddy things a bit. Unfortunately, I think it could be another excuse for the administration to delay this even longer. I would not be unexpected for Senator Kerry, who's expressed concerns about the pipeline in the past, to get in there and say, I need to further review this. We need to look at this longer, and it would be rather unfortunate.
What's the likelihood of that happening?
Just today, of all people, Senator Boxer asked him if he was going to, in his hearing, he was having his hearing today before the Senate, a confirmation hearing, asked if he'd be considering some of the climate concerns and look at those with regard to the Keystone XL pipeline. And he said, I'm going to follow the process. We're going to, we have a process for looking at the environmental concerns. We have an environmental process for looking at the economic concerns, and we're going to follow the process. I have to get there, and it's going to take some time. And shortly after that, the White House itself said they were going to need some additional time. You look at it, they've been at this for over 1,500 days at this point, the longest review ever of a pipeline, and I don't know how much longer they'll need to review this, but they're tying up an awful lot of jobs. They're looking at tying up energy security for this country, and the economic benefits are going by the wayside. And what kind of signals is sending to the rest of the world and to other business people here in America and workers themselves? It's just unfortunate.
So the oil sands up in Canada, some people say that mining that, if that's the right term, is an environmental disaster that isn't waiting to happen, but that's already happening. And having the United States take that product, we are contributing to a larger environmental problem. What do you say?
It's just not true. I think there's people who are trying to paint this as a resource that's just horrible for the environment. It's a tremendously valuable resource. There's a lot of it up there, and some of it's being mined. But when you look at what newer technology and the innovations that are happening, when they're looking at what the resource they know they can get at today, only about 20% of it's going to be mined. The other 80% is going to use a method that they call in situ, which is a much smaller footprint where they actually don't have to mine the product. They actually put two directionally drilled wells underground, and one of them they pump steam into, and the other one just collects the oil and pumps it back out again, and it's a much more environmentally friendly process. And these are the sorts of things that are happening in the industry. These are the sorts of things that are happening in the oil and gas and other sort of energy industries around the world. And technology is getting better, innovations are happening, and it's going to open up these resources and enable them to be utilized in a much more environmentally friendly way, and resources that we could use, particularly in the United States.
Well, isn't it interesting over the past 40 years of how there has been a horizon where, okay, the energy is going to run out, and then 40 years hence, we still keep finding oil in the Bakken Shale Formation in North Dakota and these tar sands in Canada. There just seems to be more energy available for us to use.
Yeah, I mean, we're able to get at the resources. There's even more there that we know is there, and some of it we can't get with today's resources. And that was, when you look at what people were saying 40 years ago, there was the same thing. Like we can't get them with today's resources. But now we're 40 years later, and we've got these new innovations. We're marrying older technologies with new technologies. And you're right, it's the Bakken, it's oil sands up in Canada, it's what's happening in Pennsylvania, places in Texas. California is sitting on a tremendous amount of resource that in shale gas and shale oil that they might be able to get at. So it's going to mean tremendous things. It's already meaning tremendous things to people here in America, and it's I'd like to believe we promote that we need all sorts of energy. We need everything from alternatives to fossil energy fuels, but we shouldn't turn our back on these resources at all. We're already seeing the jobs and economic benefits of some parts of the country, despite some of these policies that are trying to hold back and try to prevent some of this development from happening.
Talking with Matt Koch, he is with the United States Chamber of Commerce, their Institute for 21st Century Energy. We're going to take a short commercial break. 17 minutes after 6 o'clock, on the line with us from Virginia, Matt Koch. He is with the United States Chamber of Commerce, Institute for 21st Century Energy. He's the Vice President for Oil Sands and Arctic Issues. Matt, as just a regular person sitting out here in the high plains in America, I find myself really conflicted on some of this stuff. And here's my conflict. On one hand, I do not want to be burning gasoline in my motor vehicle when it comes from countries where several million of the people that live in those countries want us dead. I just have trouble with that. And then the other part of it is, I'm not a tree hugger necessarily, but I do care about the environment and I do care about the health of the earth. And so I have a problem filling up my car with gasoline that maybe comes from places where caribou roam free, and I don't want to have them harmed either. And so I'm thinking maybe I should just quit buying gasoline altogether and become a hermit. Help me.
Well, good luck. I think it's a tough proposition. I think there's a lot of people who really struggle and really think there's an altruistic goal of trying to reduce their use of fossil energy and their use of gasoline. But when you start to, as you're getting at, you start to look at where it comes from and what are some of the choices that we can make, it gets to be really difficult. But we're sitting on an opportunity right here in America right now where we can develop this shale gas and shale oil. We have resources that we'd like to develop on federal lands and other places offshore. We have neighbors just to the north of us in Canada that have this tremendous resource that they're developing and are going to develop, and that we can use. And you start to look at it, and frankly, there's opportunities to use less of it. There is more innovation that's happening. There's new standards that are being set for vehicles that are going to reduce the amount of emissions, and they reduce the amount of gasoline that's used and diesel that's used. But so we're innovative in this country. We lead the world in that. We're going to find ways to use less energy for our transportation needs. But it'll be hard to be a hermit because, it's not only that how do you get to work every day and how do your kids get to school and how does mom get on the ambulance when she falls down and has to get to the hospital, but it also is what's transporting your food to your house from across America. It's why you can get winter vegetables in the summer and summer vegetables in the winter, and how all the goods and services show up at your stores in your community and all those sorts of things. Those are a lot of things that people have to consider, and there's a lot of steps along the way that are going to need to be taken. But we're the country that can do it, and we're also sitting a lot of resources that we should understand bring us tremendous benefit and economic benefit, and we should find ways to utilize them.
Talking with Matt Koch, he's with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Institute for 21st Century Energy. I want to change the name of who you work for just a moment, and let's go out a little further. You are now the Vice President for issues dealing with energy for the 22nd century, and it's now 2013. 80, 90 years from now, where are we going to be getting our energy from to do what we do?
I still think, and I think there's a lot of people who are smarter than me, and even some government folks and people who would say that we're still going to be using fossil energy, that we have a lot of resources and we're going to be able to get at it, and we're going to use it very efficiently. That coal, which we have a lot of in this country, will be used, natural gas, oil, but we're going to be very smart about it. We're going to be innovative. But if you look at the curve, we've been looking at utilizing wind energy. You live in an area in South Dakota in the High Plains where you have a lot of wind, but we have to keep improving ways to get that wind energy into the grid, and we have to improve battery technologies. There's all sorts of innovations that a lot of these energy companies are investing in, and you've heard of them, and some of them are working or starting to work, and some of them aren't working out. Whether it's biofuels or cellulosic ethanol or hydrogen use, there's people who are studying all sorts of different ways to use to try to get at finding new ways to use other sorts of plant matters for transportation fuels, and I think it's going to be looked at. There's a lot of innovation that's happening, and a lot of it's happening very quickly, and so that's what I think the world's going to look like. I still think there's going to be a strong need of use of fossil energy, but we'll be doing it smarter. But we'll find ways to develop battery technology and to make some of these other energies make more sense and make more sense in the marketplace as well.
Do you see, you mentioned coal specifically, and the current administration has made it pretty clear that they don't like coal, and they want to get us away from coal. There are all kinds of complications with creating nuclear power facilities, no matter where they are in this country. So how are we going to transition from where we are to some of this newer technology smoothly? Or will we transition smoothly?
It's starting to happen already. And right now, actually, with this development of shale gas that's happening, there's an abundance of natural gas in this country. And so there's a lot of people who are saying we should just be, it's an easy transition. We should just transfer over from coal to using natural gas, and there was a lot of requests for permits for nuclear power just in the last few years that were being looked at by the federal government. But with the price of gas dropping so cheap, it's kind of forced a tough look by those people who are going to be investing in nuclear plants to say maybe this isn't the right time because we're going to be competing against cheap gas, but that's going to come at a cost. There is a cost of transition. It is a cost, for all these sorts of power companies and are using coal right now to transfer over into these technologies that still might be using a cheap resource. And there's also a cost when you start to look at what it means to not using the diverse supply of resource that we have. We have a lot of coal. We've been using it for a very long time, and it provides us with very cheap power. And to start to transition to something else that may be competing might just not make a whole lot of sense. So there's a price to pay for that, and some real questions that have to go into whether that's going to make sense or not.
And is there still, the possibility of technology that hasn't even been developed yet that could even, make its way into this century and into beyond?
Absolutely. As we've already talked about shale oil and shale gas. We've been talking a little bit about oil sands and what that's meant. And those are things that have happened very quickly in the last just a few years. We have all this coal, and there's people who are really wanting to fight some of the innovations that are happening. And you look at the opportunities and what coal has been done. Some of the things that have been done in the past to use it for gasification, to convert it to transportation fuels. technologies to capture and utilize clean coal technologies that would even make it more sense. But I think there's some people who in the environmental community who just believe that we shouldn't be using it at all, or even trying to stop those innovations from happening because they're just so adamantly opposed to the use of this resource, and that's unfortunate. We think we should use it and we should benefit from it, and the American economy and American workers would benefit greatly by its continued use, and we should allow innovation to happen, and we should allow those things to move forward.
In the giant scheme of this discussion, where should the money come from to do the research for these innovations? Do you feel, and I know you work for the Chamber of Commerce, but certainly there's a federal role here somewhere to lead the way with some of the research.
Right, and I think, that's kind of a hard issue to get into right now, particularly with what's happened with some of the investments and some of the loans that have happened. We look at Solyndra and you look at some others along the way. But the federal government has been a very, very good at looking at innovations. And you look at the Department of Energy, and people raise questions about where some of the loans have been to some of these companies that were being innovative. But if you back up to just the research and the hard science research that they're doing, and they've done for years, starting back way before the Department of Energy even existed with the Atomic Energy Commission and some of those places, it was the federal government that made those investments, and it was the federal government that was willing to help some innovators and some researchers take the risks that would need to be done to try to find and open up those new energy sources and make them practical and make them make sense and do that sort of research. So they do have a role in that. But when you start to getting into picking winners and losers with companies and some industries that are much further advanced along the way, that's where it starts to get, I think, a little bit tricky. So I think it's infancy and some basic hard science research. It's very worthwhile, and I think it also can be helpful to places and to universities. You look at what's happening near you, South Dakota School of Mines, and places that are benefiting greatly from and the universities, the great universities throughout your state that from some of this investment that's coming from the federal government into allowing those researchers and those students and some researchers to look into those energy resources. And we're the best at it in this country, and we should continue to try to promote that. And there's a role there for the government.
Matt Koch is the Vice President for Oil Sands and Arctic Issues with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce's Institute for the 21st Century Energy. Started off the conversation talking about the Keystone XL route approved by the Nebraska governor, which is big news, but not just for Nebraska, but all the states along the pipeline and for you and I as consumers. And so that was the reason we started talking with them, and we obviously branched off a little bit. I hope you don't mind taking a side trip with us.
No, not at all. I'm happy. You were kind enough to have me on a few months ago, and I appreciate having the chance to get back on with you, and I appreciate every opportunity I've been in South Dakota lately, because I think people there get the energy issues, and you're looking at a lot of people talk about what's happening all around you and what's happening in your state with some of these opportunities that are resulting from energy development, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about it, and I'm happy to chat with you anytime about any of these issues.
Matt, thank you very much. Hope you have a good evening.
You too. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, sir. It's 28 minutes after 6 o'clock. This is VPU.